So for today's video, we're heading on quite a big trip. We're going to go over to the RAF base at Coningsby, and we're going to try and see some Eurofighter Typhoons, and also a display by the Red Arrows. And then we're over to a few nature reserves. We're going to do Frampton Marsh, Willow Tree Fen, and Deeping Lakes. Not sure in what order yet. The picture I'm aiming for is probably going to be a Red Arrow shot. And one of the tips with the Red Arrows is to watch the smoke as much as the planes. Getting a good plane shot is great, but getting a shot that has the diesel trails they leave behind often adds a lot of character to an image. So I'll show you the final image now and we'll see what we got. Right, so we're on our way. We're heading out for, I guess, a 5-part trip today. The first thing we're going to do is ride over to RAF Coningsby, which is over in Lincolnshire. That's about an hour and a half from where we're at now. So when we get there, we are aiming for the Eurofighter Typhoon, which is a common plane to see at that location. There is a good chance of the Red Arrows being around today as well, which is always nice to see, doing a practice. And then after probably half a day there, we're going to head on to RSPB Frampton Marsh. Just have a wander around. It's a place I've wanted to go to for a while and never managed to. And then we're heading down to Deeping Lakes, which is another reserve quite close by. And at that one, we're going to do a little free camp. So there's a car park there with accessibility to some trees. And I'm hoping we can find a nice spot there for a camp. We're going to head up to Willow Tree Fen, and at Willow Tree Fen we are aiming to get the crane. I've never seen a crane, but oh, by the way, that's the bird, not the big tall things that carry stuff. Seen loads of them. So I'm hoping we can get a nice shot of a crane at Willow Tree Fen tomorrow. The journey is generally quite similar to this. It's a bunch of A roads rather than motorways, which is nice. I would have taken the DeVille on this journey, but I needed a lot of storage. So I'm on the VFR, and I have 2 panniers fitted, both full, a top box fitted, which is full, and a rucksack on my back as well. So the reason I'm so loaded with gear is because I've got walking boots, my camera equipment, all my camping stuff, and it takes up a lot of room. So it's going to be an exciting adventure. It's probably going to be very cold, and I'm sure it'll be fun. Right, let's get going. So this is a pretty nice spot. We're nearly there now. It is 1.2 miles down this road. As you can see, the roads, they're not amazing, but they're also not terrible. There are quite a few bumps and undulations in them, but it's nice. I love being able to just ride off into this field if I wanted to. I don't know why, but I do. In terms of our equipment today, we've had to pack light because we're on the bike. I have one lens, so it's the Canon RF 100-500. You'll have seen me use this on the previous video at Waddington. It is a superb lens for planes. Whilst it doesn't have image stabilization, it is so sharp when you get it right, and the zoom is very convenient as well when you're dealing with an object that's getting much larger as it gets closer to the center of the runway where we'll be stood. So it lets us deal with that. We'll be able to get in as close as the cockpit for some of the shots, and as they're taking off, we should be able to get a decent shot of the plane with the full 500mm. In terms of our camera settings on the day, we were using a high shutter speed, so we were up at 1/500th of a second for the final shot. Throughout the day, depending on lighting, we were up as far as 1/2000th of a second. That's great for freezing action on jets. For shots like a Spitfire, where it's got a rotating propeller, it's better to be at 1/200th or even lower.
I got as low as 1/100th of a second on the day. The aperture was down at f7.1, which is the widest aperture that's supported by the 100 to 500 lens when you're zoomed all the way in at 500mm. The final shot was taken at 500mm. And the ISO was tweaked according to lighting conditions. So for the shot we used at the end, it was 250. On the day, I did get as low as 50, typically around 100 ISO. The aperture pretty well stayed at 7.1 for the whole day. I was shooting high-speed continuous shooting, and that lets you catch bursts of shots, and you're more likely to catch the specific moment that you were looking for. Other settings that were relevant: shutter mode was set to mechanical. That's because I was doing propeller planes as well as jet planes, and it prevents the effect of bending propellers that you get with the readout of an electronic shutter. It's called rolling shutter. Subject to detect. This is interesting. So I used animals. With vehicles, the R5 was not tracking the planes as well as animals, and animals does a very, very good job of tracking planes as it happens. You can have eye auto detection on or not, but that will work very well, so you might find that handy. So they're all the settings you should need for shooting similar plane shots. This Spitfire was the first thing we saw take off, which was nice to see. And then the Red Arrows stole the show with 8 of the Reds on display. This was nice coming through the diesel smoke. This was in contention for the picture of the day. And then a few of the aerobatics. One nice close-up there, that stands zoom, and that was also a contender for the picture. And a nice one of the clouds, the sky, and the trails there. Quite like this with one in cloud and one out of cloud. That was a nice shot. And then we moved on to the wildlife. That is the crane that I was looking to see for the first time. And we got a couple of marsh harriers. This is a nice one of it hovering. And there was a very brave hare on the run in Willow Tree Fen, this was. And a final marsh harrier shot as the sun was starting to set. Okay, so this is the final image that's been selected. You'll see it's not a close-up of the plane, although I do like those. They're great. They make some nice shots. I find that the images I go back to after the air shows, and particularly for the Red Arrows, involve the clouds, the sky, and the diesel trails they leave behind. So I'm going to start with this one, and we can make a couple of changes to really bring out this this image's colours, because you'll see this orangey yellow in the smoke and the blue of the sky and obviously the red of the plains. We can really start to make that pop. So we'll start by duplicating the image, and we're going to go to image adjustments and shadows and highlights. Now with shadows and highlights on a bright image like this, the moment you move the slider off 0, you will see quite a significant effect on shadows, and then it will do very little for the rest of the shot. So we're going to make use of that, and we're just going to drop that up 1%, and it will take down the sky, bring out a bit of the diesel trails, and give us a starting point for the image. The highlights we will pull down a little bit. This can have quite a significant effect on an image like this. We're not going to have that great an effect, but we will pull them down probably about there. Okay, so once we've done shadows and highlights, we'll create another layer, and we're going to move on to levels. Now, because this is a really bright image, it will show a histogram here, this graph, which is a curve of the image on the right-hand side. So this shows you that it's a bright image. If that lump of that black histogram was over on the left-hand side of here, it would be a really dark, shadowy image and possibly underexposed. So the three sliders give you the black point, the white point, and the midpoint. And we're going to move the black point right the way over here to near where our data starts. And that's obviously darkened the image down significantly. We're going to pull it back up by moving the mid slider to the left. And how far we pull it will change the image quite significantly. So we can go back to roughly where we started, or start to pull out some real blue and orange from the smoke in the sky. And we're going to do that. So if I turn that off and show you the layer before, and then back on again, that's the effect we have. The next thing I'm going to do is crop the image. I don't need a layer for this because this will affect all layers. And I'm just looking to take out this dead space at the top of the image and make it a bit more focused on the planes and a little bit of the sky. So that's a nice easy crop to start. We may well crop again. On the bottom image, you'll see the planes have got a fairly bright colouring to them. And on the latest image, it's really dark red. So I'd like to pull back through some of the original plane colourings. So I'm going to duplicate the background image, but then I'm going to drag it right up to the top of the list. So we're going to see the original image again. I then want to hide all of that. So I'm going to create a layer mask and I'm going to paint that black using the bucket tool. So bucket tool on black gets rid of that layer completely. And I'm then going to use the brush tool with a white brush to bring back through those original planes. So I'm going to zoom right in for this. And I'm going to use a brush of about sort of 50 pixels-ish. And I've got a 50% opacity. And I'm just going to start bringing back those planes to how they were before. Okay, so we'll zoom in for this. This is the after. Before, it was like this. If we zoom out, you see the planes look much brighter. Now we will put the red back in shortly, but this is just to bring it back to a more natural state. So although I like this right hand side of the image for the clouds, it does mean the focal point is quite far away from the plane, so I'm going to crop that in a little bit further now. I think I'm happier with that. Okay, because we have a layer mask on here, we're only bringing through the planes on this layer here. So we'll take the top two images and duplicate them and then merge them. And what that does is it gives us a combination of those two images, i.e. the background that we developed and then the planes, merged as a single image. I can then make changes to this image which will affect essentially both those layers. So the next thing I'm going to look at is vibrance and saturation. So image adjustments and then vibrance. And I'm going to see how much I can push the vibrance up. So I think around there, that's quite high, 69. I think that's okay. Saturation, 5 is as much as I'd do, if any at all. I think I'll leave that at 0 actually. Okay, let's see before and after. Okay, so that's really brought out the sky quite well. We'll duplicate the layer again. So the next thing I'd like to do is bring up the yellow of the light on the front of these hawks. I'm going to use the quick selection tool to just quickly grab these. So I'm going to use hue and saturation here. So I'll zoom in for this change, and then I'm going to go image, adjustments, and then hue saturation. Control U is the shortcut. And I want to make these more yellow because they were yellow on the day. So I'll drag the slider over to yellow, and I'll increase the saturation here. And I'm going to tick colorize because it's going to think it's quite white. Okay, I think that's closer to how it was on the day. The next thing is I have a lot of dead space up the top here. The dark cloud does add something. It offsets against this light. And I've got some dead space down at the bottom with the blue. Again, it does highlight the edge of the cloud, but I'm inclined to halve both of those. So I'm going to trim both of those down a little bit. And it's just keeping that focus on the planes. If we look at our rule of thirds here, we've got the planes sat quite nicely on it. The bottom one's coming up to it. So that works okay. These smoke trails rotating in, I think, are quite a nice aesthetic in the image that I'd like to keep. And I don't want to lose the right hand side. Although it is empty, it's the direction of travel for the planes, and it does draw the eye quite well. I think I could do levels once more and push it a little further, so I'm going to duplicate that layer again, and I'm going to pull up our black point. You'll see that things have moved to the right hand side again with all the changes we've made. So I'm going to pull that black point in a lot closer, and then I'm going to drop our midpoint back to compensate. But I'm going to keep it quite bold. Try that. And then I'll switch that layer off, see what we had before and after. Now if we look at the plane colour, that's quite natural now. That's not too bad. I think we'll keep that. Now, pulling all the detail out does have an effect on the pixelation that you get in the sky. So if you watched the video on the shambles, you'll have seen we used the smudge tool to correct the sky. We're going to do a similar thing here. So on the smudge tool, with a big brush, we're around 500, using a strength of 50%. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to drag, because if I click and drag, it will do all sorts of weird things. What I need to do is smudge, but localized. So to do that, I'm going to click and move the mouse a little bit, and I'm going to go left and right, up and down, whichever direction I think it needs based on the image. So if in this case it's up and down, in this case it's left and right, and I'm going to move it and then move it back where it was. And all it does then is smudges the pixelation out, but then preserves how the image looks. You don't lose the aesthetic, and the tones and textures are preserved pretty well. So I'm going to do this across the sky sections. With any image, if you zoom in, you will eventually get pixelation, and it's how far you want to go. I want to be able to zoom in further than we currently can without pixelation. So this is having a really nice effect. So I'm not trying to make an unnatural effect or change anything from how it looked on the day. I'm just sort of restoring what was already there. I would say our saturation may be a little high for this now. So I'm just going to go back to vibrance and saturation, and I'm going to pull that down a little bit on the saturation just to bring that blue of the sky back a little. Okay, so we've lost a little detail on this one, but it's not terrible. It's nice having the vapor trail off the wingtips there, actually. So I'll duplicate that layer, and I'm going to have a quick look at brightness now. I think I prefer that. That's +8. Okay, so there's still some detail in the planes. I think this sky is quite pixelated, so we'll just quickly deal with that again like we did with the smudge tool. You often find in an image there's a specific focal point that you really don't want to change at all and want to remain crisp and sharp. In our case, the planes themselves. And then there are bits like the clouds, which are just background, and the overall aesthetic will stay the same even if you make some fairly wide-reaching changes to them. So I'm not concerned about making changes like that. Okay, I'll duplicate once more. I may pull a little further on our levels. Yeah, I think I can get away with that. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up levels again, but I'm going to do it colour by colour. So, interesting. So if I look at red, Alt 3 to get to red, you can see data all the way through the image. If I look up green, we're missing a lot, and blue, we're missing a lot. So I'll bring the green up 10 and the blue up 10, and just see how that looks. So I'll turn that layer off and then back on again. Okay, so it's really bringing out the sky's details, and it's also increasing the effect on this smoke. So I will continue on this layer. So back to levels again, and I'm just going to bring green up 10 and blue up 10 again, and just see how that looks. I think that's okay. Yeah, so it's brought out the colours, but it's not too unnatural. We have got a vibrant blue sky, which I don't mind. The red arrows are still looking quite crisp. The colour's right. I think that's okay. I'll give that a few minutes and come back to it and see if I still like it. Okay, coming back to that, it's bold, it's punchy, it really highlights those diesel trails. The red arrows look quite crisp, and the sky looks very blue and vibrant. I like that. I'm going to call that the final image. So I hope you enjoyed that video. The RAF display was absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed taking those photos. And the various wildlife reserves were also brilliant to see. I was a little tempted to do a bird shot as well, but one photo to one video is the rule. So the one that made the cut today was the red arrows. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more content like this, please do just click that subscribe button. It makes such a difference to me. I'll see you in the next one.